Good morning, everyone. I'm NikolasPontikos, the inventor and chief investigator of I2Gene, an AI tool that aims to accelerate the diagnosis of inherited retinal diseases. I have been developing this technology at the UCL Institute of Ophthalmology and Moorfields Eye Hospital, where I work. Here with me today are my two colleagues, Dr. Mark Fisher, our UCL Technology Transfer Officer, and Prof. Susan Downs, the principal investigator of the Oxford University Hospital site. So here's the agenda for today. First, I'll be talking to you about the challenges of inherited retinal disease and the genetic diagnosis pathway. Then I'll be talking to you about what we have achieved so far, and finally, what we're planning to do during and after this award. So what are inherited retinal diseases and why is it important to accelerate the genetic diagnosis pathway? Let me explain this to you through the story of Mohsin, age 3. Mohsin has trouble recognizing faces and has an unusual habit of staring directly into bright lights. His parents take him to the optician, where a 3D scan of his retina is taken. The optician thinks it looks normal, so glasses are prescribed and no further steps are taken. However, after a year, his vision continues to deteriorate, and so he is referred to a specialist eye hospital. An inherited retinal disease is suspected and a genetic test is ordered from a diagnostic lab. 4 years later, the hospital finally contacts the parents to say they have a genetic diagnosis and a gene therapy treatment is available on the NHS. Unfortunately, by now it's too late. The genetic diagnosis pathway has taken more than 7 years and the therapeutic window has been missed. Mohsin is 10 years old, he has no viable retinal cells left, and unfortunately has gone irreversibly blind. Sadly, Mohsin's case is not unique. Inherited retinal diseases are a leading cause of blindness in the UK, where they affect over 30,000 people, surpassing even diabetic retinopathy. We estimate more than a third of these individuals remain undiagnosed because of limited access to diagnostic services and bottlenecks in the diagnosis pathway. As this is a lifelong condition, this represents a significant health economic cost in quality-adjusted life years. The current genetic diagnosis pathway takes well over 5 years on average, meaning many patients may not be diagnosed on time. The benefits of a timely genetic diagnosis are huge. A genetic diagnosis gives patients some sense of control over their lives. It allows them to understand their condition, seek the right support, and make important life decisions based on this information, such as family planning. A genetic diagnosis also puts patients on the right care pathway for the NHS, cutting costs. There are over 20 potentially life-threatening underlying conditions that could be detected by the genetic diagnosis of an inherited retinal disease. Finally, over 1,000 individuals in the UK could be treated or recruited to a clinical trial if they had a genetic diagnosis. For these reasons, it is crucial we significantly accelerate the genetic diagnosis pathway. Our goal is therefore to accelerate diagnosis through our novel AI tool, I2Gene. I2Gene will, from a retinal scan, assist the genetic diagnosis of an inherited retinal disease by producing an easy-to-understand report for healthcare professionals. Using I2Gene will help address bottlenecks in the genetic diagnosis pathway, specifically by allowing opticians to rapidly detect referable cases, and eye hospitals and diagnostic labs to rapidly identify the genetic cause of disease. We anticipate we could reduce the time to diagnosis from 7 years to less than a year, whilst reducing the psychological, financial, and operational burden for both patients and healthcare providers. In the case of Mohsin, this would mean that using a system like I2Gene, we could have gotten the treatment to him by age 5, saving his eyesight. So where are we now in the development of I2Gene? First, I'd like to say we're in a unique position to develop I2Gene at Moorfields because we have access to the largest and most expertly curated dataset of patients in the world. Our team of clinical collaborators are also international leaders in this domain. And we are embedded in national and international consortia for inherited retinal diseases. Using our in-house Morpheus dataset of more than 52,000 scans that we have curated over the last 2 years, we have trained and tested a novel prototype classification algorithm that can classify up to 36 gene diagnosis classes. Our prototype is also the first able to use 3 types of imaging modalities in order to predict the likely causative gene. Our prototype achieves a top 5 accuracy of 88% and is the most advanced yet in terms of clinical utility. So what are we planning to do next? We are seeking £1.3 million of funding for 3 years in order to develop ITGene into software as a medical device. As described in our proposal, our project plan involves a number of work packages. Through the first 3 work packages, we will develop ITGene into an explainable AI algorithm. For this, we will externally validate our ITGene prototype across datasets from other UK hospitals as well as an ethnically distinct cohort from Japan, and extend ITGene to provide segmentation level information, which means annotating relevant parts of the retinal scan to offer an explainable diagnosis to end users. This will lead to making ITGene both robust to bias and explainable. Patient public involvement has been and will continue to be instrumental to the design and development of ITGene. Our patient advisory group is led by William Wolf, who is a computer scientist affected by an inherited retinal disease and a full-time co-applicant on this project. We are also working closely with national and international charity partners such as Retinal UK and Foundation Fighting Blindness to involve as many patients as possible in our research. Our patient involvement activities include interviews in focus groups, design of surveys, data monitoring, and of course, helping in dissemination of results and research. Our health economic work package will evaluate the cost effectiveness of ITGene. This work package will be led by Prof. Loggerly. Our initial evaluation will be to compare the current diagnosis pathway to that of ITGene. A cost effectiveness analysis will be used to model resources used in both pathways, and we will compare those pathways based on cost per inherited retinal disease diagnosed and quality of life adjusted year gained. We will also conduct a discrete choice experiment survey to help us quantify the benefits and trade-offs from a patient's perspective. The usability and clinical utility of ITGene will be evaluated as part of our Humans Factor work package. Our co-applicant, Dr. Shah, will be our clinical safety officer and will lead this work stream. We will be engaging with end users in order to investigate how ITGene fits and will be used in the clinical context, gather user requirements, and perform usability testing to ensure clinical utility. Regulatory approvals will be completed as part of a medical device accreditation work package. Through our study, we will be gathering clinical safety and efficacy data, such as diagnostic accuracy, rate, and time to diagnosis, that will be documented in our technical file. Our aim is to be in a position to obtain UK CE marking through MHRA and the notified bodies by the end of the 3rd year of funding. In terms of our commercialization strategy, once we have regulatory approvals, we'll work with the UCL partners, Royal College of Ophthalmologists and NHS Genomic Medicine Services to agree on a suitable pricing strategy. We have identified 4 immediate access points, which are specialist eye hospitals in the UK and internationally, genetic diagnostic testing and research services, as well as genomics interpretation companies, imaging device manufacturers, and pharmaceutical companies. On completion of the award, we seek further funding for Phase 3 to assess ITGene on real-world data outside of a specialist environment. This will include eye hospitals that do not have a specialized inherited retinal disease clinic, as well as community opticians. In conclusion, our mission is that in the next 6 years, we will deploy ITGene to a sufficient number of sites to significantly accelerate genetic diagnosis, yielding more opportunities for patients like Mohsin to benefit from sight-restoring treatment, improved patient care and psychological support, and reduce financial and operational burden for NHS. Thank you very much.